7 layers. This is the definitive illegal and disturbing video game iceberg. I made this iceberg myself and it's exclusively made up of the worst of the worst. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg.
Sexy Beach?
Sexy Beach is a video game series developed by the Japanese company Illusion, who will come up again later for another title they've made. The Sexy Beach series is primarily known for its adult content, focusing on the interactions between the player and the various female characters. The setting of the game is typically on a beach or resort, where the player can interact with these characters in a variety of different ways, most of which being explicit. The gameplay involves dating simulation and visual novel elements, and you're meant to engage in conversations with the characters, with the objective often revolving around developing a relationship that leads to what I'll call gameplay encounters. Sexy Beach has been controversial mainly due to its explicit content. In Japan, it falls under the category of eroge or erotic games.
Okay, but is this any different from any other Japanese game though? Like, okay, true, but is this any different from any other Japanese game though? Like, dude, I know it sounds bad though, but
face criticism and legal challenges in other countries. The depiction of certain activities, especially given the questionably youthful appearance of some of the characters, has made it slightly infamous. Due to its nature, Sexy Beach and its sequels have had a very limited release outside of Japan, often confined to specific adult-oriented platforms, or requiring modification or censoring to comply with local laws and regulations regarding explicit content. Kawaii Killer is a mobile game that garnered attention for its unique blend of cute aesthetics and violent gameplay. Developed by Tabamasu Games, a small independent game studio, Kawaii Killer was released in 2014. The game features a vibrant, colourful art style, typical of kawaii culture, which is cute in Japanese, which is obviously made to appeal to extremely young children. In the game, players assume the role of a cartoonish character named Davey, who is a trapper in a forest full of cute animals. The gameplay is very simple and only involves various tapping and swiping actions to catch and dispatch of the animals in the game in a very gory way. Upon its release, Kawaii Killer obviously faced criticism and controversy for its graphic depiction of violence against the cute cartoon-like animals that are made to appeal to younger audiences. The surge of complaints made against the game from parents of young children had it eventually removed from the App Store and Google Play.
They did? Come on!
Saying the app concept is not appropriate for the App Store in its
current state. It's not that bad,
bro. Already downloaded the game are still able to play it. Postal is an extremely controversial video game developed by Running with Scissors, first released in 1997. It's best known for its dark themes and extreme violence, and the game has been subject of debate and controversy, particularly in the context of the portrayal of mental illness and societal breakdown. The game follows the story of a character only known as
Postal 2, just what's happening like in America nowadays.
That isn't affected by an airborne agent supposedly released by the US Air Force that he calls the Hate Plague. This leads him on a violent rampage through various locations, including a ghetto, train station, trailer park, truck stop, and eventually a school full of children. The narrative is presented through Postal Dude's perspective, accompanied by a voice in his head that taunts his victims and makes cryptic comments to him. Postal plays as an isometric shooter, where the player navigates through different levels, engaging in gunfights against various enemies. The game's primary objective is to kill a certain number of enemies in the area to progress. The game stands out for its lack of a conventional narrative.
I mean, this is whatever, right? This is whatever,
no? The protagonist's actions and mental state, rather than just a traditional storyline, which initially depicted the Postal Dude attempting a massacre at an elementary school, only to find his weapons to be ineffective against the children. As they all laugh at him and his mental state deteriorates further, he finds himself restrained in a mental asylum, as satanic and hellish images cover the screen. However, the ending was later changed in Postal Redux due to what the developers called an increasing prevalence and decreased shock value of school shootings. The revised ending features the burial of an unknown person, believed to be Postal Dude's funeral.
Whatever.
Released in 1996, is an extremely unique point-and-click adventure game. It's best known for its surreal narrative and extremely gory content, and the game stands as a distinctive and extremely provocative video game. The game unfolds in the small American farming town of Harvest in 1953, where the teenager Steve Mason awakens with no memory of his past. The town of Harvest is a peculiar and unsettling place, filled with bizarre and hostile characters.
What's this? I never played it. This is fun.
Twisted parodies of real people. When Steve goes out asking the people of the town who he was or what he's doing here, he is always met with the same eerie reply.
Well, you always were a kidder, Steve. You always were a kidder, Steve.
Well, you always were such a kidder, Steve.
However, most of the townsfolk persistently urge him to join the mysterious Order of the Harvest Moon, based in the Lodge, which is a huge building within the town, which becomes Steve's new main objective. Steve's exploration leads him to Stephanie Potsdam, who shares his same amnesiac condition. Together, they seek to uncover the truth behind Harvest and find a way to escape. The Lodge becomes central to his quest, as to gain entry, Steve is given a new task each day by the Lodge, beginning with petty acts of vandalism that quickly escalate to theft and arson, with each task having unforeseen and tragic circumstances that usually result in someone's accidental death, murder, or even the suicide of a mother and her child. Meanwhile, driven by their mutual fear and reliance on one another, Steve and Stephanie become lovers. As Steve gains entry to the Lodge that he believes must hold the answer to his strange condition, and delves deeper into the building, and is forced to confront twisted moral lessons that invert traditional
okay, but why is this
values,
weird though?
like how the Lodge believes charity is futile, and how you should not respect the elderly as they are physically useless. As Steve reaches the top of the Dreamlight Lodge, the climax reveals an actual twist, being that Harvest is a virtual reality simulation controlled by scientists from the 1990s, aiming to transform average individuals into serial killers by desensitizing them to violence. The game culminates in a moral choice for Steve. He can either murder Stephanie and be brought back into the real world, thereby embracing a life of violence, or if you refuse to harm Stephanie, you'll face death in the real world. This decision leads to drastically different endings. Choosing to kill Stephanie results in the game showing a final cutscene where Steve is released into the real world, but becomes a remorseless killer influenced by his experience in the simulation. Or by choosing to live a life with Stephanie in the fake world, Steve lives a peaceful life within the simulation, but is rendered brain dead in reality. Harvester has obviously stirred controversy with its graphic violence, dark themes, and the exploration of society and moral decay.
Manhunt
was developed by Rockstar North and released in 2003. It's an extremely infamous and controversial action stealth video game known for its graphic violence.
Yeah, I kind of want to get to the good ones.
The game's story centers around James Earl Cash, a death row inmate who finds himself unwillingly cast in a deadly game orchestrated by the figure known as the Director. The game begins with journalist Mel Powers reporting on the execution of our character, James L. Cash. However, Cash's execution is a sham. He's been sedated and awakens to find himself at the mercy of the Director, who communicates to him through an earpiece. The Director promises Cash his freedom in exchange for participating in his games. Cash must eliminate gang members, referred to as hunters, across various locations in Custer City, all whilst being filmed by CCTV, to create the Director's dream snuff film. Cash's journey takes him through a series of derelict and dangerous environments, each controlled by different gangs. There's the Hoods, which are Cash's first adversaries, which consist of criminals and corrupt police officers. The Cerberus, which is the Director's personal security unit, who are also responsible for moving Cash between locations. There's the Skins, which is a Nazi skinhead gang. The War Dogs, which is a sadistic paramilitary group that kidnaps Cash's family, which just only serves to inspire his violence. There's also the Innocents, which is an outlaw gang divided into Hispanic occultists known as the Scullies, and the psychopathic Babyface.
Make it faster? I'm not making it faster. I'll go back to normal.
And the Smileys, which are a group of former asylum inmates. Cash's quest for survival quickly turns into a quest of vengeance when the Director betrays him, ordering the War Dogs to murder his family. The remaining War Dogs attempt to recapture Cash, but he manages to eliminate them and team up with a journalist who reveals the Director's true identity.
Isn't this a little crazy? Because it does show you how back then this was enough to make things bad.
Being Lionel
and nowadays
a former
this is like
film
whatever.
producer turned snuff film ring operator. The final act of the game sees Cash navigating through a police and SWAT-infested city to reach Starkweather's mansion, before finally killing Starkweather himself. The game concludes with the journalists exposing Starkweather's crimes and the police's compliance, while Cash's fate remains unknown. I'm really curious to see what's going to be the worst one. Countries due to its violence, including being made entirely illegal in Australia.
Cry of Fear.
Cry of Fear is a psychological horror game, originally released as a mod for Half-Life. However, in 2013 it became a standalone game due to its popularity. The game follows Simon, a young man, who wakes up in a gloomy alley after being hit by a car. He finds himself in a nightmarish version of a Swedish city, filled with darkness and a sense of foreboding. As
Coffee or Andrew and Lele when?
He encounters a series of...
Guys, I'm gonna give it to you straight, guys. Incest isn't really as bad as you think it is. Like, in the big scale of things, guys, incest is like whatever, bro. Like, nobody actually cares about that enough. Like, yeah, I get it, no, listen, isn't it... I know it sounds ridiculous, but it doesn't matter at the biggest scheme of... Like, guys, They're not gonna ban a game because he has incest. You get that? You get that? Like, I'm not saying that I like it. What I'm saying is that it's not as bad enough to be banned. Guys, trust me, man. Trust me, bro.
Formed and terrifying monsters, with each encounter being more disturbing than the last. The plot
These wouldn't be here.
as Simon explores various locations in the city, from decrepit apartment buildings to a subway station. Each location presents its own set of challenges and horrors, with the environment becoming increasingly surreal and menacing, reflecting Simon's mental and emotional turmoil. Simon's journey begins in confusion and fear.
Guys, I'm not saying... Okay, can we go back to the video? Guys, I'm not fucking saying that... Oh, guys, incest is hot, bro. Oh my god, dude. That's not what I'm fucking saying, dumb fucks. What I'm saying is that incest on the scale of like a line, right? It's like lower compared to like murder or like, sexual assault and shit like that. Incest is like on the good side of the bad side. Does that make sense? It's like comparing Piccolo to Frieza. You know what I mean? Yeah, Piccolo was a bad person. You know what I mean? But if you compare it to literally Space Hitler, like, he looks like a good guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of how it goes. I'm not gonna lie. It is kind of how it goes. I'm not gonna lie. It's like the lesser evils, bro. It's like the good of the bad. Whatever, bro.
As he tries to navigate the hostile city. His first major challenge comes when he finds a man who had texted him earlier in the game for help, now dead in a bathtub. The discovery marks the beginning of Simon's descent into the game's nightmarish world. A significant emotional moment for Simon occurs when he meets Sophie, his childhood friend and unrequited love, standing on the edge of a rooftop. After Simon confesses his love for her, Sophie rejects him, with their encounter ending tragically with Sophie's suicide. Throughout the game, Simon faces various choices, such as whether or not to confront or flee from the monster known as Carcass, and whether or not to turn over his gun to a doctor he encounters late in the game. These two decisions influence the story's direction and lead to completely different endings. The game's climax is in Simon's house, where it's revealed that the entire story was a product of Simon's imagination. After his car accident, Simon is now wheelchair bound and depressed, and was advised by his therapist to write about his feelings. The horrifying journey of monsters represents Simon's inner battles and trauma, with the monster Carcass
that's all in the head, bro.
Representing his declining mental state, and the doctor who you could turn your gun over to, representing Simon's therapist. Cry of Fear features multiple endings, each dependent on the player's choices throughout the game. If the monster Carcass wasn't killed, and Simon didn't give his gun to the doctor, in this ending Simon succumbs to his darkest thoughts, and feeling utterly hopeless and trapped in his own mind, he kills Sophie and his therapist, which is also followed by Simon taking his own life. His suicide note expresses his deep resentment, and a desire for his body to haunt all those who find him. If Carcass again wasn't killed, and Simon does give the gun to the doctor, this ending sees Simon's unresolved feelings for Sophie leading him down a dark path. After killing Sophie, he commits suicide, and his suicide note reveals his twisted reasoning, as he believes he can now possess her forever, as he never got over his rejection. If Carcass was killed and Simon didn't give the gun to the doctor, Simon directs his anger and blame towards his therapist, whom he kills before killing himself. In this ending, his suicide note suggests that he believes his therapist's methods worsened his condition.
Is there no suicide ending?
He also wish that Sophie never learns of his actions. And if Carcass was killed and Simon did give the gun to the doctor, the ending presents a dramatic confrontation between Simon and his fictionalized book self. The real Simon, experiencing a mental breakdown, believes he's killing his imaginary counterpart. However, in reality, he fatally shoots 2 police officers. Simon is then admitted to a mental hospital under the care of his therapist, which is somehow probably the most hopeful out of these endings.
Well, that was alright.
We're now moving on to level 2 of the iceberg.
Oh,
Custer's Revenge.
Finally, bro. Finally, dude. Level 2, finally. The exciting shit.
Endings. We're now moving on to level 2 of the iceberg.
Revenge? Okay,
Custer's Revenge was released in 1982 by Mystique for the Atari 2600, and is often called one of the worst games ever made. The game features a character modeled after General George Armstrong Custer, who fought in several wars against Native Americans.
Custer?
And the game's objective is really simple. The player controls a pixelated Custer, depicted with an exaggerated pencil, as he attempts to cross a field under arrow attack to reach a naked Native American woman tied to a pole. Once you reach the pole, you mash the action button as fast as you can. The better you mash, the more points you earn, with the game restarting after getting 50 points. I'm not going to explain what mashing the action button does, as I'm sure you can use your imagination. The game is simple and repetitive, and was part of a series of adult-themed games released by the company, which sought to exploit the video game industry for sensationalized adult content. The development of Custer's Revenge did not involve any significant or technological gameplay innovations. Instead, it relied solely on its shocking content to generate sales and publicity, as Custer's Revenge faced legal challenges, protests, and calls for its ban. Though the game's designer, Joel Miller, said Custer...
Okay, just saying, dude. Just saying, bro. I'm sorry. This is not even... Like, look at what boomers had to do, bro, to mimic a fraction of the average hentai game on Steam. Like, just saying. Like, a fraction, by the way, mind you.
Seducing the maiden, and that she was a willing participant. Stuart Keston, president of America Multiple Industries, the company who published the game, stated, "Our objective is not to arouse, our objective is to entertain. When people play our games, we want them smiling and we want them laughing." Released in October 2014, the teaser trailer for Hatred was anything but ordinary.
My name is not important. What is important is what I'm going to do.
They portrayed the game's main character, expressing their disdain for humanity, gearing up to embark on what they called their genocidal crusade. In Hatred, you play as the antagonist, a disturbed man completely disillusioned with the world and humanity. Fueled by pure hatred, he embarks on a violent killing spree with one simple goal: to eradicate as many human lives as possible before he himself was taken down.
So
the gameplay is uncompromisingly violent, and the game itself
this is hard as fuck, probably.
With the objective being pretty straightforward: navigate through various levels from the suburban neighborhoods to police stations and exterminate every living soul. Hailing from Poland,
this is the type of shit Russians be playing when they make their entire personality about it.
In fact, Hatred was their debut title. The game was heavily inspired by the twin-stick shooters from the arcade era, but with an obvious and somewhat immature dark twist. The developers aimed to create a game that, in their words, avoided politeness, colourfulness, and any sort of philosophical undertones. They sought to create a game that served as a reminder of the industry's past as a rebellious medium and purely surface-level entertainment. Whilst the game in its trailer was designed to provoke,
this is whatever,
the CEO of Disruptive Creations expressed surprise at the scale of the reaction it received, as he firmly believed the game didn't cross any moral boundaries, asserting that those who disagreed could just choose not to play it. The team has often stated that they intended for Hatred to be a response to the trend of games becoming more politically correct, as their true aim was to push boundaries. Among actual players, reactions were divisive. While the game garnered a cult following of the...
Okay, hot take, this is not that big of a deal. I think this is whatever. I know to a lot of people this is disturbing, and I get that, but this is whatever, really. The thing is, it's like, I feel like a lot of times, people put like a coating on top. It's like, for example, the way I see it, it's like when you paint your car a different color. You know, it's still just a fucking car, you know what I mean? Just because it's a mass shooter, you could do that on GTA, killing NPCs randomly, and nobody thinks about it bats an eye. You know what I mean? It's just a bad game, frankly. But not really. It's whatever.
Those who appreciated its no-holds-barred approach to violence, many felt it gratuitous, having very little impact other than the initial shock value.
Exactly.
Mainstream media, often less forgiving than the specialized gaming outlets, called it the most
violent video game in history
and one of the most controversial games of all time. Hatred's dark themes even led to its temporary removal from Steam, although accompanied with a personal apology from Gabe Newell himself, who was later reinstated, citing an error in its removal. Hatred's physical release was not
my gold game to Gabe Newell said no.
The first game to earn an adults-only rating from the ESRB, solely for its extreme violence. This made mainstream retail distribution in the United States nearly impossible, as major console manufacturers prohibit...
You guys want to hear a crazy take? This is just an actual opinion. Video games should if you really sat down and you really thought about it, if you really sit down and really think about this, it's kind of fucked up how the only popular the most popular is FPS games. It's killing. It's always it's murder. You know. I know. Like we collectively agree that it's whatever, But I think it's a little fucked up that the most popular video game is the idea of going around killing other people. Whether regardless what it is, a military game or Overwatch or whatever it is, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's really interesting how people tend to gravitate towards those specifically. I know it's gonna sound like I'm being woke, but I'm not saying being woke. I don't think it's a bad thing though. But I do think it's a little morbid that we're so desensitized with violence in general that we don't consider it like a thing anymore. Like that it matters. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Adult-only rated games on their platforms. Fast forwarding to June 1st, 2015, Hatred was finally released to the public. The game used Unreal Engine 4 to create its game world, and at the request of Epic Games, the developer of the Unreal Engine, the logo was removed from the game and trailer. And also, just before the game's release, Twitch announced a ban on all adult-only rated games, thereby prohibiting Hatred from being streamed on the platform.
Left Behind, alright, what's this?
Is a real-time strategy game developed by Left Behind Games in 2006.
What's this?
It's based on the popular Left Behind series of Christian apocalyptic fiction by Chris LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. The game combines religious themes with strategy gameplay, and it's set in the post-apocalyptic world following the biblical event of the Rapture. In Left Behind Eternal Forces, players find themselves in a post-Rapture New York City. According to the game's narrative inspired by Christian beliefs, the Rapture has taken all true believers to heaven, leaving the rest of the world to face the consequences. The player leads a group of tribulation forces, fighting against the Antichrist's army, known as the Global Community Peacekeepers. The gameplay involves building up a base, gathering resources, and recruiting and training units. Players must manage their own team of characters, each with specific skills and abilities. The game focuses not on just military strength, but also on spiritual warfare. Players need to maintain the faith of their units while combating enemy forces and completing
Isn't it just StarCraft?
One of the unique aspects of Left Behind Eternal Forces.
What am I watching? This is just Age of Empires.
While combat is a part of the game, players are also encouraged to use prayer and spiritual influence to sway enemies onto their side. However, Left Behind Eternal Forces generated controversy primarily due to its religious themes and the portrayal of spiritual warfare. Critics and some religious groups were concerned about the game's blending of violent strategy gameplay and religious content, debating on whether or not it's appropriate to mix the gameplay involving combat and conversion with the teachings of Christianity. The game also faced criticism for its portrayal of non-Christian characters and the concept of converting or battling against them.
That's insane though, that's insane though.
Potentially promoting religious intolerance.
Isn't it crazy how much power religion has? To the point that like if you shit talk it in general, like the people just shut down. Isn't that insane though? I don't know.
Or just being plain divisive. Despite the controversy, the game found a niche audience amongst fans of the Left Behind series.
I don't know, that's just
interested
crazy.
in Christian-themed games. Left Behind Eternal Forces is not only a unique title on this iceberg, but just in video games in general. We're now moving on to level 3 of the iceberg.
Hong
Kong 97.
Donkey Kong?
Is a 2D shoot-'em-up game, infamously known for its controversial and bizarre content. Developed by Happy Soft Limited, also known as the Japanese writer Kurosawa and his friend who helped him make the game. It was released in 1995 for the Super Famicom, which is the Japanese version of the SNES. The game gained notoriety not just for its political themes, but its extremely shocking content. The game is set in the year 1997, around the time of the transfer of Hong Kong's sovereignty from the United Kingdom to China.
Is that Mao?
The player controls a character named Chin, who is for some reason described as a relative of Bruce Lee. Chin's mission is to eliminate an influx of people from mainland China, represented as endless waves of enemies, and ultimately defeat a resurrected Tao Xiaoping, which is a misspelled reference to the then Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping. Hong Kong 97 is really simplistic in its gameplay. The player is Chin, shoots incoming enemies while avoiding being hit. The game features a single level that repeats indefinitely with no variation in gameplay or objectives. It's known for being extremely challenging, with many players unable to survive for more than a few seconds. Now, the game gained significant controversy for several reasons. Its portrayal of Chinese people and the use of a real-life political figure as a villain
they could call it out of the middle, bro.
Offensive. But the real reason people still know of Hong Kong 97 is because it includes a real photo of a still unidentified dead body as a game over screen, which is obviously going to shock and disturb many players, especially considering with how often they die in the game. The game has a very amateurish and crude design with poorly designed graphics and extremely repetitive music. Hong Kong 97 is remembered far more for its notoriety rather than its gameplay quality.
Now
this one is a double entry. Quest for Bush and Quest for Saddam are first-person shooter games known for their political content and controversial nature. Quest for Saddam, created by Petrilla Entertainment, was released in 2003, while Quest for Bush, a mod of the former, was released later by the Global Islamic Media Front, an Al-Qaeda propaganda organization. These games gained attention for their direct reference to real-world political figures, and obviously being directly in contest with each other. Quest for Saddam is a low-budget game set against the backdrop of the Iraq War. In the game, players go out on a mission to capture the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. The gameplay involves navigating various environments in Iraq, battling Iraqi soldiers and other enemies.
You know what's one thing that I hate?
Finding and capturing...
Whoa! Okay, hold on, this game is fire, wait a second. I was kind of up to hate on it, but now I see the potential though, wait.
Saddam. The game was criticized for its simplistic portrayal of complex political and military situations, as it was an obvious form of propaganda, trivializing warfare as a whole. Quest for Bush, also known as Night of Bush Capture.
This is gonna sound a little crazy, bro, but I always thought about this. Dude, this games, I don't know, I feel like, I don't know. Dude, this games I just have so much hate, but there's no game, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, this guy's like, you can tell that this is made by somebody who doesn't care about video games and just cares about propaganda. That's the thing that pisses me off, you know what I mean? Like, this is not made with passion. It's just made, it's like when people just say the N-word, you know what I mean? Like, you know, for, like, when was the last time you got upset at that? Never, you know? Nowadays, it's like, oh, you know what I mean? Because it's just attention spam. It's just attention spamming, you know? It's just, hey, look at me, guys, look at me, I'm retarded. Like,
is a modded version of Quest for Saddam released by an Al-Qaeda propaganda group. The game's narrative was altered to target the then US President George W. Bush. In this version, players assume the role of a jihadist fighter, with the final objective being to capture or kill the president. The mod obviously completely flipped the original game, turning it into a tool for anti-American propaganda, whilst Quest for Saddam was criticized for its oversimplification and potential insensitivity regarding the Iraq War.
Saddam video game!
Even more severe criticism.
Station.exe.
Station.exe is a relatively obscure and mysterious video game. Well, I don't even know if you can call it a video game. It's known for its enigmatic origins and connection to internet folklore, particularly within the community of the X-board on 4chan. The game has gained infamy among enthusiasts of creepy and unconventional games, partly due to its eerie atmosphere and the mystery surrounding its creation and purpose. Station.exe reportedly originated from a disc found at a tech expo in Rochester, New York, an anonymous user claiming their father purchased a CD case containing 2 discs. While the first disc had engineering software, the second unmarked disc held the game Station.exe. The game is believed to have been created with Blender, and its subsequent exploration has led to various speculations and theories about its purpose and origins. The player navigates through a completely blank environment and is pursued by floating faces with ambient noises adding to the eerie atmosphere. If you're caught by one of these faces, the game instantly closes. One of the most intriguing aspects of Station.exe is the discovery of numbers within the game, which some players interpreted as coordinates. These coordinates supposedly lead to a real building in Russia, which mirrors the structure of the building found in-game. This element has led to speculation about the game being part of an ARG, though no one has actually yet to go to the coordinates in Russia. The enigmatic nature of Station.exe extends beyond its gameplay. When people reportedly dissected the game's code, they claimed to find a variety of unusual elements and connections to other internet forums, and a creepy password-protected website that still no one knows the purpose of.
What the fuck? The Guy Game
is a game that garnered significant controversy and is highly illegal today. Developed by Top Heavy Studios and released in 2004, the Guy Game is set up as a trivia quiz game, where players answer questions while watching live action footage. The game features young women, often referred to as the hotties, who participate in various challenges and are filmed in locations like beaches during spring break. As players progress through the game by answering trivia questions, the live action camera footage includes scenes of the women revealing themselves. If the player answers the question...
Look at the fraction they need to just mimic hentai, bro. Crazy.
This is correct.
Crazy.
The game features a rating system that tracks the player's success, with higher scores unlocking more explicit content. The Guy Game became infamous for obvious reasons. The game faced criticism for objectifying women and for its explicit content, as it was accused of promoting a sexist and demeaning portrayal of women. However, the controversy truly escalated when it was discovered that one of the women featured in the game was underage at the time of filming. This revelation led to legal actions and the game being pulled from shelves in several regions,
That's insane.
due to it being considered CP. Lost Boy.exe is an obscure video game.
Okay, what? This is a level 3, by the way. This is level 3. Like, what happens at level 5 and 6, bro? Like, level 6 gotta be made by literally Hitler. Like, if Hitler's not the developer, then I'm not interested. Like, level 6 gotta be like, oh yeah, they tried bringing the Chaos Emeralds to revive the fucking, like...
They gained notoriety in online communities, particularly on 4chan. The game itself is stylistically similar to the classic Windows 3D maze screensaver. You basically have to navigate through maze-like environments with a first-person perspective. The game's design is relatively simple, but it's distinguished by its incorporation of strange and unsettling satanic imagery within the maze's walls. Lost Boy initially gained attention due to a version of the game that was widely distributed that contained a virus. The infected version, which first spread on 4chan, was made for stealing personal information from players, including things like passwords and credit card information. The presence of the virus, coupled with the game's creepy imagery, added to its mystique and made it a topic of caution and intrigue. However, fairly recently, it was realized that the virus-laden version of Lost Boy was not created by the original developer, but was instead modified by an unknown third party. Somewhat recently, the original version of Lost Boy.exe was uncovered. This version, free of any malicious software, offers players the chance to experience the game as it was initially intended by its creator. The virus-free version is essentially a slightly eerie horror game, focusing more on creating an unsettling atmosphere rather than being a fully fledged game. We're now moving on to level 4. Super Columbine Massacre RPG was developed by Danny Ladone and released... We're on to level 4. Super Columbine Massacre RPG was developed by Danny Ladone and released in 2005. The game is a role-playing simulation that recreates one of the most tragic domestic attacks in American history. The game's narrative closely follows the real-life events leading up to and including the event itself, focusing on the perspectives of the shooters being Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. The game starts with a depiction of Eric Harris being woken up by his mother on the morning of April 20th, 1999. Harris then calls Dylan Klebold so they can meet to finalize their plans for the attack. In the game, Harris and Klebold plant propane bombs inside the building. When the bombs fail to detonate as planned, they decide to proceed with their
Is this the first? What the fuck is gonna happen later on?
Nonetheless. The game allows players to control the characters as they navigate the school, with the number of victims being determined by the player's actions. The sequence ends with the characters turning their weapons on themselves, followed by a montage of real and fictional images, including photos of the shooters and scenes of mourning. The game takes a surreal turn in the second half, depicting Dylan Klebold's journey through hell. Klebold encounters and battles demons and characters from the video game Doom, reflecting the shooter's interest in violent video games, and the mainstream media's focus on Doom's potential influence on the teen.
No way!
Hell, Klebold and later Harris meet various fictional characters like Pikachu and Bart Simpson, and historical figures like Malcolm X and John Lennon for whatever reason. The game culminates in a battle against Satan, whose sprite was just ripped from South Park. After defeating Satan, the characters are congratulated and the game concludes by returning to the school, where a press conference is held. This segment of the game includes dialogue that directly references the actual event and satirizes the political and media reactions to the massacre. The game critiques various aspects such as gun control debates, religious fundamentalism, and the scapegoating of Marilyn Manson in video games in the aftermath of the shooting.
That's crazy though. That's the craziest one we've seen so far. That's like actually insane though.
Reloaded is a video game that stirred significant controversy upon its release in 2004. Developed by Traffic Software, it's a simulation game that aims to recreate the assassination of US President John F. Kennedy in 1963. The game's stated intention is to prove the findings of the Warren Commission, which concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in the assassination. The game is set on November 22nd, 1963 in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas, where
I'm not allowed to watch this on video? I know it's a video game though, but...
President Kennedy was assassinated. Players assume the role of Lee Harvey Oswald, positioned in the Texas school.
Oh, never mind, I'm not on Twitch.
The objective is to replicate Oswald's shots as accurately as possible, based on the Warren Commission's report. Players are given a rifle and are tasked with shooting at the motorcade that drives through Dealey Plaza. The game features a detailed physics engine designed to realistically simulate the reactions of the president and the other individuals in the motorcade when hit by bullets. The primary gameplay involves aiming and firing at the moving motorcade, and attempting to recreate the bullet trajectories and wounds as reported by the Warren Commission. After each attempt, players receive a score based on how closely their shots match with the historical account.
That's insane though, that's insane though.
Trajectory, timing, and the reactions of the characters in game. JFK Reloaded was met with immediate controversy due to its sensitive subject matter. Critics and the public widely condemned the game, for allowing players to reenact a national tragedy, with many viewing it as tasteless and disrespectful. The Kennedy family expressed dismay at the game's release, and it faced criticism from various political
it's
and
like
public
whatever,
figures.
but can't fuck
Despite
up,
the developers' claim that the game was intended as an educational tool to validate the Warren Commission's findings, the nature of the game led to accusations of exploiting a tragic event for entertainment and profit.
Did they even sell well?
VTech Rampage is a video game created by the independent developer Ryan Lamborn.
What is this,
released
bro?
shortly after the tragic Virginia Tech shooting in 2007. VTech Rampage is set in a simplified representation of the Virginia Tech campus. In the game, players...
Dude, banned games, open video, just school shooting videos. Oh, like, dude, Americans and their fucking culture, bro. They can't help themselves, bro.
Who perpetrated the Virginia Tech massacre. The gameplay involves navigating through the campus and enacting the events of the shooting. The game's objective is to mimic the real life.
like this is the most. Oh, I can't stand this.
Tragedy. A choice that led to immense controversy. The game's graphics and mechanics are rudimentary, reflecting its status as an independent and poorly made game. The game was obviously made to exploit the recent and painful tragedy, with it obviously being highly disrespectful to the victims and their families. Ryan Lamborn, the game's developer, faced intense personal backlash, with many accusing him of seeking attention and profiting from a horrific event. His response to the controversy included an offer to remove the game from distribution if he received $2,000 in donations, but not before retracting his offer of removing the game, and later admitting it was all a joke, aimed at critics who demanded the game's removal.
KZ Manager,
with KZ being shorthand for the German word for concentration camp, is a simulation management game where players are put in charge of a concentration camp during World War II. As you can imagine, the game has been widely condemned for its insensitive and inappropriate portrayal of the Holocaust, and has been made illegal in several countries, with Germany being among them. Upon launch in the game, you're greeted with a simple question. The game asks you how you view Turkish people, and you have 4 options to pick from. Option 1 says you view them as a helpful person. Option 2, you view them as a dumb person. And 4 says something along the lines of that you only view them as welfare parasites claiming their free monthly check. If you choose either of the kind options, the game closes immediately. In KZ Manager, players assume the role of a concentration camp manager during the Holocaust. The game's objective is to effectively manage the camp, which involves exploiting prisoners for labor, dealing with prisoner deaths, and managing the camp's finances.
That's insane.
There's no overarching objective or real goal to the game. The game presents the activities in a cold, managerial style, devoid of any empathy or historical context.
I gotta say though, that,
now on level...
you can tell how they put a lot of effort into pixel art. This was made with hate, 100%. Like, the other ones, bro, the other one is just like pro versus noob versus hacker, you know what I mean? This was made with hate, you can just tell. Like, dude, even, like, you know, I don't know, you can just tell.
5. I need to issue empathy or historical context.
Ethnic cleansing?
We're now on level 5. I need to issue a serious content warning from here on out, as some of these games are fairly disgusting. 2002's
can't be that bad.
Ethnic Cleansing was developed by the American white supremacist organization, the National Alliance, and was published by its subsidiary record label, Resistance Records. Ethnic Cleansing was created as a part of a broader, ideological push by the National Alliance, a group well documented for their white supremacist views. The game was designed to be provocative, to generate shock and controversy, whilst disseminating a white supremacist message. The game itself is entirely unremarkable in its mechanics and graphics.
The enemies shoot at you from outside of your view zone. It's just cheap.
Rather, it was the horrendous thematic content that made it so infamous. The game is a first-person shooter featuring 2 levels, where the player, embodying either a skinhead or Klansman, is tasked with killing stereotypical African-American, Latino, and Jewish enemies. The final boss is a fictionalized version of Ariel Sharon, the then Prime Minister of Israel, which obviously just adds to the anti-Semitic views propagated by the game's creators. In keeping with the game's theme, black characters were designed to resemble apes and emit monkey-like sounds when shot. Jewish characters are clothed as Orthodox Jews and shout "Oy vey." Mexicans, also on the receiving end of the stereotyping, exclaim, "I need to take a siesta now," after being shot.
No way, I gotta see that though.
It was a deliberate attempt to further propagate the racial bias and hatred, and to quicken the pace at which the developers' long-awaited race war would begin. The game was launched on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, being the 21st of January 2002.
Dude, I don't know. Dude, you guys ever notice that races are just boring? But like, not in the sense of like, you know, like, oh, you know, like, we are racist. We hate, we hate people of color. You ever realize that race is not just boring? Like, their hatreds and shit like that, it's all just bottom of the barrel, bro. You know what I mean? It's like they're barely like, oh, we're gonna make a game. Oh, we're gonna make it so, the black people have monkey sounds and Mexicans say shit. That's it? Really? That's the best you can think of? Bro? That's so lame. I'm not gonna lie. Whatever, bro. Whatever, bro. It's just no hanging effort.
It was
no effort, bro.
$14.88.
No way.
Another nod to the white supremacist 14-word slogan, and the numbers.
It's the same shit every time, yeah.
HH, which I'm sure you can figure out. Many organizations took issue with the game, and ethnic cleansing has been repeatedly ranked as one of the most controversial games ever made, and it just serves as a reminder of the capacity of video games to be used as propaganda.
Interesting.
Euphoria is a Japanese visual novel developed by Clock Up and
fuck no, bro. The Japanese,
released in 2011. It's an adult-oriented game that blends psychological horror, mystery, and very explicit scenes. Euphoria is set up in a mysterious and closed environment where the main character Kazuke,
I read this shit? Hell no.
Wakes up without any recollection of how he got there. He finds himself in a blank white room along with 6 women, some of whom he recognizes as peers from his school. As you can expect from this deep in the iceberg, none of the women are of age, excluding Natsuki, who is an English teacher at the school. Euphoria primarily involves reading text and making choices that influence the direction of the story, depending on the decisions made by the player. These decisions can lead to drastically different outcomes, some of which are extremely disturbing. The story starts with all our characters being confused by the abnormal situation.
Okay, but is this any different? Okay, I hate to be that guy, bro, but is this that different from any other hentai Japanese game? I don't know, man. Like, there's a lot of fucked up hentai Japanese games, bro. I don't know.
When a mysterious voice suddenly announces to them that the game will now begin. The game unfolds as a series of escape-like room scenarios, where the characters must solve puzzles and make decisions to survive. The first puzzle involves Kazuke, our character, and the only male in the group. He is named the group's unlocker.
Okay, guys.
And must select
guys, just put it out there, right? Just warning, right? I don't know what the video has, like, from here forward. So if a lot of you guys feel uncomfortable, you know, you can click off the video. Just saying you guys know ahead of time, because I don't want to hear someone say, why is Redshell watching just like most fucked up thing about? Just saying, dude, ahead of time. Just put this out there. You know what I mean?
The women as his keyhole. I think you get the idea.
That's
One of the girls, being Mayako, isn't too excited by the idea and starts to panic, causing the lights to be cut out by the mysterious game master. Once the blinding lights turn back on, Mayako is strapped to an electric chair and is eliminated from the game. Though, as you can come to expect from a game this far down the iceberg, our character enjoys the display and becomes more ready to become the unlocker to one of his unwilling keyholes. Euphoria was developed by Japanese game studio Clock Up, known for creating adult visual novels with dark and often controversial themes. The game was initially released in Japan and later translated into English due to its popularity among visual novel enthusiasts. Euphoria has a decent sized following among visual novel fans who appreciate its complex narrative.
What the fuck's going on in Japan, bro? Like, what the fuck's going on over there, guys? Like, what the hell, bro? Actually. Like, no, actually, bro. Genuinely, what is wrong with you guys? Like,
the developers Clock Up have some other equally disturbing visual novels that have often seen praise for their writing in these fan circles. 177 is a Japanese video game that was released in 1986 by Macadamia Soft and was tastefully named after the Japanese legal code for doing a certain thing without the consent of the other person. The player controls a male character who pursues a female character with the intent of assaulting them. The gameplay involves navigating through various levels, avoiding obstacles and other characters to catch the female character. The good ending is if the player catches the female character. The game will then play a graphic and explicit cutscene that has been the primary source of the game's controversy, after which you'll see another scene of our character and the woman married. The second ending, or what people call the bad ending, happens if you fail to catch the woman before she reaches her house and gets you arrested. The game was obviously criticized for promoting and trivializing sexual
What was illegal games ever? Open Inside, Japanese rape game.
violence against women. It is seen as deeply problematic, not only for its graphic content,
dude, for fuck's sake, Japan, like, what is going on, bro?
A serious crime as a form of entertainment. 177 was released during a time where the video game industry was still in its early stages of exploring adult themes. However, the game crossed ethical boundaries by centering its gameplay on a terrible act. It was later and re-released with slightly more conservative scenes and gameplay.
Lolita. Oh my god.
With the lower tiers, Lolita Syndrome was developed in Japan by Katsumi
It's always Japan, bro. It's always Japan.
Mochizuki,
It's always
an
Japan.
individual who at the time was an illustrator for children's educational comics. What I find to be especially abhorrent is that the game was published by the company Enix, which later went on to become Square Enix, a massive game publishing company. The game was the winner of Enix's second biannual Game Hobby Program contest, and thus was sponsored by them, which I just think speaks to the slightly more than strange culture regarding Lolita at the time. Released in 1983, the game takes place within a house called Mason Lolita, where
come pick
underage
up your man though, like
run around the house without clothes.
See, my goats could never, bro. You know what I mean? My goats could never. Listen, guys. Personally, guys, I'm gonna be honest. Personally, guys, I have acknowledged that Japanese people are freaks and are weird as fuck, bro. And there's ain't nothing you can do about it. Sadly, there ain't nothing you can do about it, bro. It's just the way the world works. It's just that Mexicans and being lazy. You know what I mean? It's just the way that the cookie crumbles, bro. I'm sorry,
and have to play games which involve narrowly avoiding death. The player must solve puzzles in order to save the cartoon girls from their violent deaths, and to get your reward, which is to see the cartoons without any clothes. The game was not originally advertised as containing gore, and this element was only hinted at on the game's packaging. The game opens showing the 5 doors of Mason Lolita. Each door represents a minigame that you can take part in. The first door is the buzzsaw room. It's simple. A girl is strapped to a table and a circular buzzsaw is slowly moving. The player must choose the correct key from 10 keys in order to release the girl. After 5 incorrect guesses, the buzzsaw reaches the girl, who you then have to watch perish. If the player is successful in freeing the girl, you can guess what the reward is. The next game, the password room, is probably somehow the most tame.
Jesus, bro.
A sleeping girl is lying on the bed, and the game
Dude, you know what's crazy, bro? Americans go power crept. You know what I mean? Like, they tried being edgy so badly with like the school shooting games, but they only got this is literally like they just go power crept straight up, bro. Like they became Krillin, you know what I mean? And now we're in Cell, so like they can't do anything anymore. Like they got out of skill.
Hints to the player in order to type the correct Japanese word in order to wake her up and have her take her clothes off. And the rock paper scissors room hosts a very simple game. The player plays the game of rock, paper, scissors against the girl, who removes a piece of their clothing each time the player wins. The final room doesn't contain a game, or rather a gallery, where the player can view images of all the cartoon girls. The
performative edgy versus straight up degenerate
was extremely popular,
Holy
and
fuck.
thus developed a cult following with Japanese otaku and game collectors during the time of its original release. In 1985, the creator of the game developed a sequel called My Lolita, which was far tamer and less violent, but did not sell nearly as well as its predecessor.
What? Zog's
Nightmare was developed and released by the National Socialist Movement, a neo-Nazi organization in the United States. The game is steeped in racist, anti-Semitic, and hate-fueled ideologies, and is the spiritual successor of ethnic cleansing. The title Zog's Nightmare refers to the acronym ZOG, which stands for Zionist Occupied Government, a term used in those sorts of circles to allege that the government is secretly controlled by Jews. In the game, players assume the role of characters fighting against various groups and individuals that the game developers view as enemies.
I think Roblox games are better.
Races and ethnicities other than white people that are supposedly controlled by Jewish people. The gameplay mechanics are typical of a first-person shooter, where players navigate.
Every single game so far has been pedophilia in Japan versus school shooters in America. Is there a singular thing that's not just hateful crimes
through various levels, engaging in combat against
Japan being
depicted in a highly offensive and derogatory manner? The game's objectives revolve around violent actions against these caricatured enemies, underpinned by the game's racist and anti-Semitic themes. As I said, the game is very much inspired by ethnic cleansing and follows the same exact format. Due to its content, the game has not been widely distributed and is generally only available through very niche channels. Demonophobia is another horror-themed game, known for its extreme content and controversial nature.
Don't say Japan,
by
please.
An individual known as Sakuma K. It's a Japanese freeware game that could be classified as survival horror. Demonophobia revolves around a young girl named Xiaomu who finds herself trapped in a hellish otherworldly dimension filled with grotesque creatures and constant threats. The game's primary focus is on survival, with Xiaomu attempting to navigate through this terrifying environment. You can often see mutilated or hanging corpses, as well as fleshy creatures composed of young women. The game is notorious for its graphic depictions of violence and gore. Xiaomu can die in a multitude of ways, each more gruesome than the last, with most of them including the alien-like monsters forcing themselves upon the not-of-age Xiaomu in different ways. And the deaths are depicted with detailed and explicit animations. The actual gameplay in Demonophobia is a combination of puzzle solving, exploration, and trial and error, though even the puzzles aren't without the disgustingness. As for instance, one requires Yaomi to urinate at a certain time, otherwise she'll become infected and die. One of the distinctive features of the game is its high difficulty level. It provides little guidance, forcing players to often die, witness the animations, and repeat the scenario. Sakuma-Kei, the developer, released the game as freeware, making it available for download without charge. The game's development and release seem to have been a solo effort, with little information regarding Sakuma-Kei's identity or motivations for creating the game. The game has become somewhat of a cult classic in certain circles, particularly amongst fans of horror games, and those far more extreme and obscure end of the spectrum. Now I think this next game was one of the worst on this list in certain circles, particularly amongst fans of horror games, and those interested in the far more extreme and obscure end of the spectrum. Now I think this
It's not gonna get better, is it? It's not gonna get better.
Next game was one of the worst on this list. I think that because this game wasn't made by a little indie dev or one guy on a 4chan thread. This game was made by a proper game studio and was distributed and sold commercially for a number of years. Rate Play, which was developed by Japanese game developers Illusion, who are also the developers of Sexy Beach,
no
which we featured earlier.
Throwback.
Sexy Beach may have been controversial, it was only Rate Play that garnered significant international attention. The game was released in 2006, and it starts with our character, Masaya Kimura, being arrested for assaulting a woman. However, he's quickly released from custody and seeks to revenge on the woman, Aoi, who reported him. As the game progresses, he decides to not only target the 17-year-old Aoi for his plan for revenge, but also her younger sister, 12-year-old Manika, and their widowed mother, 42-year-old Yuko. The game's plotline is told through a visual novel style format, however the more interactive scenes that the player controls are where things get much worse. After our character stalks 12-year-old Manika onto a train, the core gameplay starts. Using the mouse to simulate Kimura's hand, you can move your mouse over different parts of the girl to get different reactions. The ultimate goal of the sequence is to fill what's called the arousal meter on screen, which fills out depending on where you touch them. But it somehow gets worse. After enough cursor movement, they eventually lose their clothes and will shamefully cover themselves with their hands. The game follows the same loop of stalking and assaulting until you eventually corner and capture all three women. Once captured, our character Kimura reveals his ultimate plan to make them all subservient to him. Despite the mother Yuko's desperate pleas to spare her daughters in exchange for her compliance, Kimura makes it clear he has zero intention of releasing them. Now the game has two equally strange endings that both result in Kimura's death. The black ending, as it's called, ends in Kimura impregnating either one of the three women and ultimately deciding to keep the child. A few days later, Kimura is at the subway station when he falls onto the train tracks and is hit by a moving train. And perhaps the even weirder red ending results in the game showing a scene of Aoi brandishing a knife which she uses to ultimately end Kimura's life, also whilst hysterically laughing. The game ends with Aoi being questioned by the police for Kimura's death. Now the game's reception is a tale of cultural contrasts and differing sensibilities, as the world both in Japan and abroad thought extremely differently of the game. In Japan, the initial reception of the game, like many of Illusion's releases, was somewhat muted. Illusion, after all, have produced many adult-themed games, and the Japanese gaming community, particularly those indulged...
I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like over there, that people just see video games as just a piece of media. And I feel like that's what the disconnection of between the West and the East is. Where like the West, we think more about what the fuck, what the hell are you doing? Well, the Japanese is more like, who cares? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Erotic games, or eroge as they're called.
Could be. I don't know, to be honest.
Addition to the genre. However, it wasn't until 3 years later, in 2009, when the game began circulating internationally, notably via online platforms like Amazon, that the controversy truly started. Keith Vars, a British MP, brought the issue into British Parliament after discovering that the game was being sold on Amazon, despite not being officially distributed or supported outside of Japan. Amazon then removed the game from sale on its website as a result.
I mean, the name is fucking crazy, though.
The pressure reached its peak when the Ethics Organization of Computer Software, which is the Japanese rating organization for adult games, restricted the sale and production of the game, effectively banning it globally.
Me personally, I feel like they shouldn't exist, obviously.
Including in Japan. Though the restrictions didn't stop there. Australia completely...
But then the thing is, you do understand that nowadays, there's like porn games that are like 5-6 times worse than this ever was, right? It really goes to show you that how like disconnected and dehumanized we really are, you know?
The game's distribution due to a campaign led by the Women's Forum of Australia. In Argentina, the game ranks as the only video game to be illegal, and even the US Supreme Court took note, with Justice Samuel Alito using it as an example of the base themes that the video game industry was willing to exploit.
Yeah,
and with the backlash, some
I agree with that actually.
Arguing that while it's distasteful, it's not fundamentally different from other games that involve violence and murder. Illusion in all of this was bewildered by the international response, and reiterated that the game
somebody
was
had to make that too.
Japanese laws and had never been intended for sale outside of Japan. However, due to the controversy, Illusion removed all references to the game from their website and ceased its distribution entirely. The game's infamy had an immediate effect on several other Japanese erotic game publishers, prompting them to ban all foreigners from their websites. Companies like
foreigners
and Visual Arts banned foreign IP addresses and even went as far to tell foreigners to move to Japan if they wanted to play their games. These actions obviously led to criticisms of xenophobia within the eroge community. Despite all the controversy, Illusion continues to produce adult-themed games.
Is that the group of my family?
The creatively named Honey Select and VR Kanojo emerged, leveraging enhancements in VR. Fortunately, these games are slightly more legal in their themes. But the key question is, did the game tarnish Illusion's reputation irreparably?
I seen that
the game did attract widespread condemnation, especially internationally. Within the adult gaming niche, Illusion still remains.
This is insane, though. I'm not gonna lie. This is insane.
Splatter School is a Japanese video game known for its extreme violence. It was developed by indie game creator Just USA, and it's a side-scrolling game that combines elements of horror, gore, and survival. The game has gained notoriety for its graphic content, and is often discussed in the context of extreme horror games. Splatter School is set in a high school environment that turns nightmarish. The player takes on the role of an extremely young female student who must navigate through the school whilst
let me guess. Gore and rape.
Being pursued by alien-like creatures. Though the most disturbing part of the game has to do with your character herself. Every time you take damage, you lose an item of clothing until you're fully nude. And then once you finally lose all your health and die, you are subjected to some of the worst death animations I've ever seen, with some of them involving multiple of the aliens forcing themselves on your character. The school is designed to be maze-like, with various classrooms, corridors, and hidden areas that the player must explore. The gameplay itself involves exploration, puzzle solving, and just general evasion, as the primary objective is to survive and escape the school. Now, Splatter School and Demonophobia are extremely similar, as they're both side-scrolling gory games made in Japan. I don't think one is worse than the other. They both feature extremely gory and gruesome death animations.
We can't see the animation,
depraved.
So.
In the game Fun, the game opens up with a screen reading that this game was made by a demented person, which is definitely accurate. The game first takes us through a red environment, and we get introduced to our character. He tells us a story, saying since that he was young, he's always wanted to force himself upon people, starting with all the girls at his school, and now his own mother. After reading his story, you can drop into a long winding hole, and at the bottom there's a real photo of a headless woman, with text overlaid on top of it saying, "Hello Mum." Clicking the photo takes you into a room with the mother, who looks to be decomposed already, even though you can still talk to her. You basically insult her before ordering her to do something that I can't describe. The game then cuts to the decomposed mother laying on the floor with text simply reading, if you click on the mother, you're transported to what's called the pleasure room, where you have a choice. The game asks if you're a psychopath and if you want to see more. You have two options, being yes and yes. Inside the psycho room holds some of the worst imagery I've honestly ever seen. There's real gore of women in terrible scenarios. I can't even begin to describe a single one of these images without my channel being entirely nuked. But just know you don't ever want to play this game. The game has garnered somewhat of a cult following despite its terrible contents, with people praising the game and of course saying they're having fun.
Oh my god, we don't like the worst ones by far, the Sad Satan.
Sad Satan is a video game that emerged from the depths of the internet. Made famous for its disturbing content, it first appeared in 2015 on the YouTube channel Obscure Horror Corner, with some people thinking that they themselves created the game. The game itself is a first-person game that takes players through dark, maze-like corridors with minimalistic graphics.
This game has illegal content, it can land you in jail time. This game, I mean, it's a video age restricted. No, it doesn't seem to be age restricted. That should be fine, right? Don't want to get banned in another platform.
The game's environment is eerie and disorientating, with a clear lack of objective or narrative. As you walk through the maze, you're
Didn't PewDiePie play this? What?
Encounter various disturbing audio clips, like edited versions of Hitler's speech, or distorted screaming sounds, and images that will suddenly flash, including references to historical events, random disturbing imagery, and for what it's most known for, an uncensored image of PC backwards. The gameplay is largely exploratory, with players wandering through these unsettling corridors while being subjected to a series of audio-visual dissonances and disturbing content. The lack of context or explanation for these elements
I'm a little scared.
Nature. Sad Satan was reportedly discovered on the dark web, a part of the internet obviously known for its anonymity and subsequent illicit activities. The YouTube channel Obscure Horror Corner claimed to have found the game on a dark web forum, which just further adds to its mystique. The game garnered attention not only for its bizarre and disturbing content, but for the fact that some versions of the game were reported to contain even more illegal images and even malware, making it even more dangerous to download and play. This entry is a little different. As mentioned earlier, Eric Harris was one of 2 perpetrators involved in the attack on Columbine High School, which ended up being one of the worst shootings in modern American history. Obviously the news and such talked a lot about the attacks at the time, and one of the things they focused on was Harris's enjoyment of the game Doom, and the possibility that Doom inspired the attack. Harris didn't simply enjoy playing Doom, he also enjoyed making custom maps for the game, of which he made several, with most of them being empty deathmatch maps that are meant to be enjoyed with a friend. Like one of his maps, Bricks, where he thanks his good friend Dylan Klebold for helping him playtest the map. But one that really sticks out and is particularly disturbing is UAC Labs.wad. UAC Labs was made in 1996, which would be 3 years before the incident, and is said to be modelled after the high school itself. And it's the only one of his maps that features enemies that try to fight you. You start outside a building only with a pistol, and gradually move inside where you find a shotgun. Some people think the map was created so the two could strategize and plan out their attack more effectively, though that is merely speculation. Though you can still find and play most of Harris's maps today, 3 of them you still can't, being Thrasher, Assault, and Real Doom. The FBI permanently scrubbed these maps from the internet and still no one knows why. The fact that UAC Labs wasn't taken down yet these 3 were, leads me to believe that these maps harbored something even worse.
Damn!
And thanks for watching, guys. That
was a long watch, holy fuck. That was a crazy rabbit hole, though. I have never gone through this rabbit hole, though. Very interesting. Very interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. Never asked Cyrus where he got his gameplay footage. That's a little crazy, too. No Black Souls? I'm sure there's other games that were not mentioned. Dude, we gotta do more of these, like, unusual weird shit that we've seen. Not gonna lie, that was fire. That was fun. Not gonna lie, that was fun. Well, guys,